Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy Rich, aka Major Monkey. Hope you guys are doing good. Hope you've been having a phenomenal week so far. We're back with another review video today. It's going to be about the Sabre V2 Pro from Corsair. Massive shout out to them for sending this mouse out for a review, and just, thankful for another opportunity to work with them. Had an awesome time with the MMO mouse that I reviewed for them, and so here we go again. Round two with Corsair. Did they cook with the Sabre V2? Well, we'll get into that, and hopefully by the end of the video, you guys will have an answer for that. If you guys are new to the channel, welcome, and let's get straight into the review. Alright guys, so first off, the price. How much does the Sabre V2 cost? So it costs about $100, which is actually pretty surprising coming from a bigger company like Corsair. You know, when you see companies like Razer, Logitech, and Corsair, HyperX, usually their products are kind of, they cost more than what they're probably truly valued at. But $100, so not too bad. Definitely not a budget mouse at all. It still is a lot of money. It's $100 that you're going to be spending for the mouse. But $100, it comes in two colors, a black with like some yellow accents, and then the white version, which as you can see, we are rocking the white version here. Now, they rate it for 36 grams, and typically with mice, they'll usually give you the advertised target that they're weighing the mouse at, and usually it'll be like a give or take 1 to 3 grams, maybe heavier. With my surprise, actually, though, the mouse actually came in under the 36 grams. For my personal unit was in the upper 34 grams, and so yeah, just super sweet that they were able to create a mouse, advertise a target weight, and it's not accurate to the weight. It is not 36 grams. But instead of the typical, being over that target, it's actually under. And so, yeah, very, very lightweight mouse. If you are someone that really enjoys that kind of mid to sub 30 grams, like this is definitely very, very lightweight. It comes in 8K polling included. You don't have to buy a separate dongle or anything like that. It comes included right out of the box. They are using their Marksman S sensor, which from what I understand is just a customized version of a PixArt sensor. Never had any issue with the sensor so far. It's been performing perfectly fine. Up to 70 hours of battery life is what they're advertising. Now, of course, if you're playing at something like 8K, like I always mention in all these videos, you're not going to get 70 hours. You're probably going to get something a lot less because, the 8K will chew the battery life, tremendous. But, if you're playing at maybe about 1K, which is what they actually advertise. If you scroll through their website, there's a, little asterisk small text where they say that at 1K is where you'll hit the target of 70 hours of battery life. 70 hours is a lot. I mean, that is multiple days of gaming before you'll ever have to connect the mouse. You know what I mean? So that is not a battery life to scoff at whatsoever. Super solid. They are rocking a web hub actually for this mouse. From my understanding, the first ever mouse from Corsair that is not using a software based, but actually a web hub. And so, yeah, we'll get into that later. But you know me though, I love a web hub, and so I'm just super excited to kind of talk to you guys about it. And I think it's a huge W coming from a massive corporate company like Corsair, seeing what these smaller companies are doing by offering these web-based versions for the software. Instead of downloading it, adding it to your computer, you can just go in a browser and access what you need for the mouse. I think it's awesome that they included that, and like I said, later in the video we'll go more into that. Alrighty guys, so now we've gone over the quick little bits of the specs. Let's get now into the shape. Alrighty guys, so for these shape comparisons here, I actually have one mouse in particular, and that is the Daru A950 Air. They are very, very similar in mice, where the only real differences I can kind of grasp from looking at these two mice is the Corsair Sabre V2 is slightly higher towards that front center of the mouse, and the sensor positions, are slightly off from each other, where with the A950 it's dead center at 50%, where the Sabre V2 is at a 48%. But other than that, it is a very, very close to identical mouse. The A950 is actually a cheaper option. Right now I think on Amazon you can get it for about $70, I believe. And so yeah, with it being so similar, I've never used the A950, but if you are someone that maybe $100 is still a little bit too much out of your price range, but you are curious to maybe try this shape out, the A950 is definitely an option there. And although I've never personally have used that mouse, yeah, the shapes are damn near identical. And so yeah, if you are looking to try this and you can't afford that $100 option, I think the A950 is definitely a perfectly fine choice. Alright guys, let's get now into the final part of the video, which will just be my overall thoughts and opinions of using the Corsair Sabre V2 Pro. Alrighty guys, so first off, I just want to quickly go over the hub for the mouse. Again, no software needed for a corporate gaming mouse. That's first time I'm ever saying that. So for the Corsair, you're just going to simply go to the Sabre web hub. You will authorize, as you typically do with these web hubs. And then there you are. You are connected to the mouse now, to its web hub. And very, very minimal options here. Not like a ton of different stuff. You have your choices of making different profiles for the mouse. You have your key assignments, DPI changes here. And then, you have a macro manager. That might seem like, okay, well, where do I change the polling rate? All this other stuff. You actually go down to the device settings, and that's where you can change the polling rate from 1K to 8K. It does have a sleep timer, but stuff like debounce, and like liftoff distance, they don't really have any of that. And so it's a very, very minimal kind of just web hub. It's basically, if you don't really care to mess with that kind of stuff, then you are someone that will absolutely love it. It's just straight to the point. You can change your DPI, you can change your polling rate, and there you go. You got your mouse ready to go. If you are someone that does like to maybe tinker more with the mouse and change things like debounce and other kind of stuff like lift-off distance, then this might be something that is a little bit of a disappointment. I think the more customization, the better. But to me, though, as someone like myself who doesn't typically mess with that stuff too much, I'm perfectly fine with this, and yeah, zero complaints with it. But alright guys, I've been using the mouse now for a little bit, and what are my thoughts and my opinions? First off, I'll just kind of quickly talk about the cons that I think, that at least my personal cons of the mouse. First thing I wanted to talk about were the main mouse 1 and 2 clicks. They are mechanical switches, and the reason why I didn't talk about it in the specs category is just simply because I wanted to kind of go more in depth about them. So they are mechanical switches that they are rocking, and I typically don't, I don't know if I really have a preference over mechanical or optical. To me, both have been fine, and I've had very good experiences with both types of switches before. But for some reason, when it comes to these specific mechanicals that they're rocking, I don't know, they're definitely not, they're not bad, but to me, I can't think of a mouse. It's gonna sound like I'm saying that they're bad, but they're definitely one of the more recent mice that I have tried where I really did not enjoy the switches on this. I think some people will use them and think they're fine. I think they're okay. They're not awful. I think I've just been using recent mice that I've preferred their switches and the feel of the switches much, much more than something like the Sabre V2. But again, during actual gaming though, these switches never caused any sort of problem. I never felt like I misclicked. I never felt like, there was so much pre or post travel. Like, the switches felt very okay. Like, there was no actual in-game performance complaints. Just in personal feeling of like the feel of the switch and my personal taste is what ultimately like kind of brings it down for me. But yeah, the second complaint I have is the coding of the mouse, and this one's a very, very personal one. For you guys, you may enjoy the coding for it a lot. I think the coding for me personally, as someone that has hyperhidrosis, and currently, it's pretty warm where I live, and so it's a very non-grip coating. Like, I can't grip to save my life on this mouse. Like, it's not possible. It's a very, very smooth kind of shell that I just cannot get a good grip, just to be upfront. And then on top of that, with my hyperhidrosis is kind of acting up, it's even harder for me to get a grip with the mouse. So I am rocking the X-Ray Pad Cicada grips on this, and that, completely changes it for me. I love these grips so much. Just like with the Final Mouse, where I just couldn't get a good grip. I think the coating on this is even slippier than something like the Final Mouse. And so with these grips, I'm able to at least hold kind of a grip and not feel like it's slipping drastically when I kind of, tense up a little bit more in the actual game. So yeah, my biggest two complaints of the mouse are going to be the coating and the mouse 1 and mouse 2 clicks. Just not my favorites, especially the coating. It was very hard to use it without any sort of grips. Now they do have grips that come with the mouse. Usually when it comes to these like stock grips, they're just not typically my favorite. I feel like they're better options out there, and so because I already had these Cicada grips, I just put these on instead, and much prefer these more than the actual included grips. Also, when it comes to the mouse skates, these skates that they had included weren't awful. They weren't also like fantastic either. And so I put on my own, the Artisan F8 skates, and that's what I prefer. They feel a lot better to me than the stock ones. And yeah, overall though, playing in my multiple type of genres of shooters, you have your slower paced tacticals and your more dynamic, faster paced games. I played a lot of Marvel Rivals, Valorant, CS2, and when playing those games, the mouse performed really well. There's, again, in actual use, I never had a single complaint about the mouse, other than like stuff like the coding, but again, the grips really just kind of fixed that issue for me, and I have really been enjoying my time with the mouse. I think Corsair did a great job with the Sabre V2. I think, again, it's $100, so if you are someone that can't afford that, there is, like I showed you guys, a clone basically of this shape that is slightly cheaper. And so for me personally, I do recommend this mouse. I think even regardless of my little complaints that I have of the Sabre V2 Pro, I think this coming from a company like Corsair, a big company that you'll see like at a Best Buy or whatever, I think it's really, really cool to see that they are to some degree looking at these smaller companies and seeing what this, the peripheral community actually is asking when it comes to their gaming mice, and attempted to bring that for the customers. And I think they did to a certain degree. And so I do want to give them their flowers, because I would have never expected, out of the three companies, I would have maybe expected this maybe from like a Razer or Logitech more so than Corsair, but definitely not this price range though. If it came from Razer or Logitech, this mouse would have been like maybe $140, $150. And so the fact that they were able to sell it for just $100, I think is fantastic. Also, I forgot to mention, a lot of people have been doing this little flex test here at the top. It does bend. Don't do that. Don't be dumb. Don't break your mouse. You're never going to put enough pressure there to actually bend it. So yes, does it flex there? Sure. In actual use, will you ever do that? No. And if you do, you have the craziest grip I think I've ever witnessed. So just don't do that. But yeah, man, I think Corsair did a great job with this mouse. I don't think it's the best mouse I've ever used from a corporate big company, but I think for $100, what they offer is a really nice package. You have 8K, you have great battery life, the sensor feels good. I never had an issue with anything technically in or mechanically in the mouse. The switches, although not my preference in feel, they performed fine. I had no issues with it. Battery life was great. Everything was good. Again, minor complaints with the feel of the clicks. The coding for me personally wasn't that good, but that's a personal thing. You might rock this mouse and not really have much issues like I do with my hyperhidrosis, and the mouse might just feel really solid. And so that's why I want to really emphasize that these complaints are very much personal complaints and not, objective complaints. They're very, very subjective and very personal for me. And so yeah, I think Corsair killed it. Great job with them. $100. If you have the money and you want to check it out, definitely check it out. And if you don't have the money, like I showed you guys in the shapes comparison, that Daru A950 Air mouse is a little bit cheaper and seems to be almost identical in shape. And so yeah, try that out instead if maybe you don't want to go full into $100. All right, guys, thank you so much for the video. I appreciate you guys. Have a great day. I'll catch you later.